What this dog did stopped an entire plane, and no one could believe why. A police dog stood right in front of a plane about to take off, and no matter how much they tried to move him, he just wouldn't budge. The pilots, frustrated and confused, decided to look into it, but when they found out the real reason, they were speechless. The morning at Reagan National Airport in Washington, D.C. had begun like any other. The endless stream of passengers flowed through the terminals. Flight attendants checked their schedules, and pilots reviewed their flight plans. Among them was Captain Jack Thornton, a veteran pilot with 25 years of experience, preparing for a routine flight to Los Angeles. At 48, Jack had the calm demeanor of someone who had seen it all. His salt and pepper hair and the slight crow's feet around his eyes spoke of years spent navigating both turbulent skies and life's unexpected challenges. This morning, he stood tall in his crisp uniform, going through the pre-flight checklist with practiced precision. "Weather's clear all the way to LAX," said his co-pilot Melissa Chen, scrolling through her tablet. "Should be smooth sailing." Jack nodded, his mind already racing ahead to the mechanics of the journey. Flight AA1437 was scheduled to depart at 10:15 a.m., carrying 212 passengers. Among them was Sarah Taylor, a young journalist returning home after covering a political rally in D.C. She sat in the terminal, typing furiously on her laptop, trying to finish her article before boarding. "Last call for passengers on flight. AA1437 to Los Angeles," announced the gate attendant, breaking Sarah's concentration. She quickly saved her work, packed her laptop, and joined the line of passengers waiting to board. As she walked down the jet bridge, she couldn't shake the feeling that something about this flight would be different. Meanwhile, in another part of the airport, K-9 officer Ryan Mitchell was conducting routine security checks with his partner, a 4-year-old German Shepherd named Maverick. The dog had been with the airport security team for just over 2 years and had already built a reputation for his exceptional tracking abilities. "Come on, boy," Ryan said, leading Maverick through the cargo area. "Let's wrap this up." Ryan was a former military man who had found his calling in K-9 training after leaving the service. At 35, he still maintained his military discipline, which translated well to his work with Maverick. The bond between them was unbreakable, formed through countless hours of training and high-pressure situations. As they completed their rounds, Ryan noticed Maverick becoming increasingly agitated. The dog's ears perked up and his nose twitched rapidly, signs Ryan had learned to recognize as alerts. "What is it, Mav?" Ryan asked, giving the dog more leash. Suddenly, Maverick broke away, darting across the tarmac toward the Boeing 787 that was preparing for departure to Los Angeles. Ryan's heart raced as he sprinted after his partner, watching in disbelief as Maverick positioned himself directly in front of the aircraft, his posture rigid and alert, his eyes fixed on the cargo hold. "Maverick, heel!" Ryan shouted, but the command fell on deaf ears. The dog remained planted in position, a low growl emanating from his throat. Inside the cockpit, Jack Thornton was communicating with the control tower when he noticed the commotion on the runway. "Tower, this is AA1437. We have a situation on the tarmac. A K-9 unit is blocking our path, requesting instructions." "Copy that, AA1437. Hold position. We're assessing the situation," came the response. Jack turned to Melissa, his brow furrowed. "In all my years, I've never seen anything like this." Back on the tarmac, Ryan had reached Maverick and was trying to understand what had triggered such an unusual response. The dog's training was impeccable. This wasn't random behavior. "Sir, you need to remove your dog immediately," demanded the higher ground crew supervisor, Harold Jenkins, a man known for his strict adherence to schedule. "We have a flight ready for departure." "I can't do that," Ryan replied firmly. "Maverick is signaling something in the cargo hold. We need to investigate before this plane takes off." Harold scoffed. "Do you have any idea how much a delay costs? We've run all the standard security protocols. That plane is clean." Ryan stood his ground. "I trust this dog with my life. If he says something's wrong, then something's wrong." As the standoff continued, Airport Security Director Elizabeth Winters arrived at the scene with 20 years of experience. In aviation security, she had learned to balance protocol with instinct. "What's the situation, Mitchell?" she asked, her voice calm but authoritative. Ryan explained Maverick's behavior, emphasizing the dog's track record of accuracy. Elizabeth observed the German Shepherd, noting his unwavering focus on the aircraft. "All right," she decided. "Let's conduct a secondary inspection. Captain, please inform your passengers there will be a slight delay." Inside the plane, Sarah Taylor watched through her window as security personnel gathered around the aircraft. Her journalistic instincts kicked in, and she discreetly took out her phone to capture some photos of the unfolding scene. Across the aisle, businessman Thomas Wright checked his watch impatiently. "What's the holdup?" he muttered, to no one in particular. Little did he know that his perfectly arranged schedule was about to be the least of his concerns. The cabin crew tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, offering reassurances to increasingly restless passengers. Lead flight attendant Grace Rodriguez, a 20-year veteran of the skies, moved through the cabin with practiced ease. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a brief delay due to a security protocol. We appreciate your patience and will update you as soon as we have more information." Her calm demeanor helped soothe most passengers, but a current of tension still ran through the aircraft. In seat 14C, Professor Alan Fisher, an expert in chemical engineering returning from an academic conference, observed the activity on the tarmac with growing concern. On the ground, Elizabeth Winters had mobilized her team. "I want a full cargo manifest check and a physical inspection of the hold," she ordered, "and get me the surveillance footage of the loading process." As the security team sprang into action, Ryan stayed with Maverick, whose attention remained unwavering. "What do you see, boy?" he whispered, trusting the animal's instincts, even as doubt crept into the minds of those around him. The initial review of the cargo manifest revealed nothing unusual. Standard luggage, some electronic equipment, perishable items, and a few specialty shipments, all properly documented and cleared. And yet, Maverick's behavior suggested otherwise. "We need to open the cargo hold," Elizabeth decided after reviewing the initial reports. Harold Jenkins protested vehemently. "This is completely unnecessary. Do you know how many procedures you're breaking right now?" "I'm following the most important procedure of all, ensuring the safety of everyone on that plane," Elizabeth replied firmly. "Open it." As the cargo hold doors swung open, Maverick lunged forward, pulling Ryan toward a specific section where several containers were secured. The security team followed, methodically checking each item against the manifest. "Everything matches so far," reported one of the officers. But Maverick wasn't convinced. He circled one particular container, pawing at it insistently. According to the manifest, it contained specialized electronic equipment bound for a tech company in Los Angeles. "Let's open this one," Ryan suggested, pointing to the container that had captured Maverick's attention. The security team carefully unsealed the container. At first glance, it appeared to contain exactly what was listed: electronic components, packed in protective casings. But as they began removing the items, Maverick's excitement intensified. "There's something else in here," Ryan said, his suspicions growing as he helped the team dismantle the packaging. Behind the legitimate shipment, hidden in a specially designed compartment that blended seamlessly with the container structure, they discovered an unmarked package. The team approached it with caution, employing explosive detection equipment and other specialized tools to assess the contents without handling them directly. Inside the cockpit, Jack Thornton received an update from the control tower. "AA Barnfoyrun 37, be advised that the security inspection is ongoing. Prepare for possible deplaning procedures." Jack exchanged concerned glances with Melissa. This was no longer just a minor delay. "Should we inform the passengers?" she asked. "Not yet," Jack decided. "Let's wait for more concrete information. No need to cause panic." On the tarmac, the security team had made a shocking discovery. The hidden package contained a sophisticated device, unlike anything Elizabeth Winters had seen in her 2 decades of security work. "We need to call in the specialists," she said, already reaching for her secure phone, "and evacuate that plane immediately." Within minutes, a carefully orchestrated evacuation began. The cabin crew, trained for such contingencies, maintained remarkable composure as they guided passengers off the aircraft and back to the terminal. "Please leave all personal belongings behind and proceed calmly to the exits," Grace instructed, her voice steady, despite the gravity of the situation. As Sarah Taylor moved toward the exit, her reporter's instincts told her this was more than a routine security check. The urgency in the flight attendants' voices, the continuous arrival of security personnel on the tarmac, something significant was happening, and she was determined to uncover the truth. Once safely in the terminal, passengers were directed to a secure waiting area. Rumors spread quickly among them, ranging from mechanical issues to terror threats. Thomas Wright paced anxiously, his business meeting in Los Angeles now certainly delayed. Professor Fisher observed the proceedings with analytical detachment, his scientific mind already formulating theories about what might have triggered such an extensive security response. Back on the tarmac, specialists had arrived to examine the mysterious device. Their preliminary analysis confirmed what Elizabeth and Ryan had suspected. This was something that should never have been on a commercial flight. The sophistication of the concealment method indicated a level of planning that sent chills down their spines. "Whoever put this here knew exactly what they were doing," one of the specialists remarked grimly. As the investigation intensified, one question loomed large. How had this package made it past the airport's supposedly impenetrable security systems? And, perhaps more importantly, who had put it there? For Ryan Mitchell, the focus remained on Maverick, who had potentially saved hundreds of lives with his extraordinary abilities. As he knelt beside his canine partner, offering well-deserved praise and affection, Ryan couldn't help but wonder how deep the security breach might go. In the terminal, Jack Thornton addressed his displaced passengers, providing what limited information he could. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the inconvenience. We've experienced a security alert that requires further investigation. We're working closely with airport authorities to resolve the situation as quickly as possible." Sarah Taylor listened intently, her journalistic training enabling her to read between the lines of the captain's carefully worded statement. This wasn't just a routine security check. This was something far more serious. As she scanned the crowd of frustrated travelers, she noticed a tall, distinguished-looking man in a suit observing the proceedings with unusual intensity. Something about his demeanor set him apart from the typical disgruntled passenger. The man caught her gaze and quickly looked away, disappearing into the crowd before Sarah could approach him. Little did she know this brief encounter would lead her down a path that would change her life forever. 3 days after the incident at Reagan National, Sarah Taylor sat in her modest apartment in Los Angeles, staring at her laptop screen. The flight had eventually been rescheduled, but the mystery of what happened that day continued to gnaw at her. As a journalist for the Los Angeles Chronicle, she had a nose for stories that others missed, and this one had all the hallmarks of something significant. Her editor had initially dismissed her pitch. "Delayed flights happen every day, Taylor. Unless you've got something concrete, it's not news." But Sarah couldn't let it go. She'd spent the past 72 hours digging into public records, calling contacts, and searching for any information about what had transpired that morning. The official statement from the airport cited a security protocol activation resulting from an abundance of caution, the kind of corporate speak that told her absolutely nothing. Her phone rang, breaking her concentration. The caller ID showed an unknown number. "Sarah Taylor speaking," she answered cautiously. "Miss Taylor," came a male voice she didn't recognize. "I understand you were on flight AAR 437 3 days ago?" Sarah's journalistic instincts immediately sharpened. "Who is this?" "Someone who thinks the public deserves to know what really happened," the voice replied. "Check your email in 5 minutes. Don't try to trace this call." The line went dead before she could respond. Sarah's heart raced as she refreshed her inbox, repeatedly until exactly 5 minutes later, a new message appeared. The sender was anonymous, the subject line simply reading A1437. With trembling fingers, she opened the email to find a single document attached, a partial security report that had clearly never been intended for public eyes. The report confirmed her suspicions. Something had been found in the cargo hold, something that posed a significant threat. The details were redacted, but the report mentioned K9 unit intervention and hidden compartment detection. Sarah leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. This was the confirmation she needed that there was a bigger story here. But who had sent her this information and why? More importantly, how far was she willing to go to uncover the truth? Meanwhile, at Reagan National Airport, Ryan Mitchell was facing his own dilemma. The events of 3 days ago had turned him and Maverick into reluctant heroes within the airport security community, but something about the aftermath didn't sit right with him. "Mitchell, in my office," called out Elizabeth Winters as she passed him in the corridor. Once inside her office, Elizabeth closed the door and lowered her voice. "The investigation is being taken over by federal authorities. We're being told to step back." Ryan frowned. "That's standard procedure for something of this magnitude, isn't it?" "Yes, but not like this," Elizabeth replied, concern evident in her voice. "They're shutting us out completely. No information sharing, no updates on findings. It's like the incident never happened." Ryan thought about Maverick's behavior that day, the certainty, the urgency. Whatever they had found in that cargo hold was significant enough to warrant this level of secrecy. "What about the device we found?" he asked. Elizabeth shook her head. "Classified. Even I don't have clearance anymore." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "Ryan, there's something else. Someone's been reviewing all of Maverick's training records, your personnel file, everything." Ryan's spine stiffened. "Who?" "I don't know. The request came through official channels, but when I tried to follow up, I hit a wall of bureaucracy." Elizabeth leaned forward. "Be careful, Ryan. Whatever you and Maverick stumbled into, it's bigger than we thought." As Ryan left Elizabeth's office, his phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "We need to talk about what your dog found. Vernon Park, 7 p.m. Come alone." Across the country in Los Angeles, Jack Thornton was struggling to return to his normal routine. The airline had given him a few days off after the incident, standard procedure after any significant disruption. But he found himself unable to shake the uneasiness that had settled over him since that morning on the tarmac. His wife, Diana, had noticed his distraction. "Jack, you've been staring at that coffee for 10 minutes. What's going on?" Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Something about that security incident doesn't add up. In 25 years of flying, I've seen security alerts, mechanical issues, even weather emergencies. But I've never seen a response like that. Never had federal agents interview me for hours afterward." Diana reached across the kitchen table to squeeze his hand. "Maybe it was just protocol." "Maybe," Jack conceded, though he didn't believe it. "But why are they being so secretive about what they found? And why would someone hide something in a cargo hold that a trained dog could detect?" The questions had been circling in his mind for days. As the captain, he'd been briefed only on a need-to-know basis, told only that a prohibited item had been discovered thanks to the K9 unit's intervention. But the intensity of the federal response, the way the entire incident had been downplayed in official reports, something wasn't right. His phone chimed with an incoming email. It was from the airline informing him that he'd been reassigned to international routes for the next month, starting with a Tokyo flight the following morning. Jack stared at the screen in confusion. He hadn't requested a schedule change, and such last-minute reassignments were unusual. "What is it?" Diana asked, noticing his expression. "I've been reassigned. International routes starting tomorrow." He looked up at his wife. "They're moving me away from domestic flights." The implication hung in the air between them. Away from the DC to LA route, away from whatever had happened 3 days ago. As evening fell in Washington, DC, Ryan Mitchell drove to Vernon Park, his mind a tangle of questions and possibilities. He'd left Maverick at home, honoring the request to come alone, though every instinct told him it was a risk. The park was quiet at this hour, with only a few joggers and dog walkers enjoying the cooling evening air. Ryan sat on a bench near the central fountain, his posture casual, but his senses on high alert. At exactly 7:00 p.m., a man in a gray suit approached and sat beside him without a word. Ryan recognized him immediately. Harold Jenkins, the ground crew supervisor who had been so adamant about keeping the flight on schedule. "I didn't expect it to be you," Ryan admitted. Harold stared straight ahead, his voice low. "There are things you should know, Mitchell. Things about what your dog found." "I'm listening." "Not here." Harold glanced around nervously. "I shouldn't even be talking to you, but I can't stay silent anymore. The package your dog discovered, it wasn't the first." Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean?" "There have been others on different flights, all carefully concealed, all bypassing standard security protocols." Harold handed Ryan a small flash drive. "This contains shipping manifests, flight numbers, dates. There's a pattern." "Why are you giving this to me?" Ryan asked, pocketing the drive without looking at it. Harold's expression was grim. "Because whoever's behind this has connections in places that scare me. The authorities who should be investigating this are burying it instead." He stood up abruptly. "I never gave you anything. We never spoke." Before Ryan could respond, Harold walked away, soon disappearing into the growing darkness of the park. In Los Angeles, Sarah Taylor had spent the afternoon verifying the information from the anonymous email. Her search had led her to a Cybers cafe in a nondescript strip mall where she was less likely to be traced. Using her skills as an investigative journalist, she cross-referenced the partial security report with flight records, airport employee schedules, and news reports from the day of the incident. A pattern began to emerge, not just about Flight AA-137, but about a series of flights over the past 6 months. All had experienced unexpected security delays, all had been quickly resolved with minimal public attention, and all had shared certain crew members or ground personnel. Sarah was so engrossed in her research that she almost missed the man who sat down at the terminal next to hers. When she glanced up, she froze. It was the same distinguished-looking man she had noticed at the airport 3 days ago, the one who had disappeared into the crowd after catching her gaze. "Miss Taylor," he said quietly, his voice cultured and calm, "I believe we have a mutual interest in Flight 37. Sarah's hand instinctively moved toward her phone. "Who are you?" "My name is Daniel Harrington. I work for a government agency that I'm not at liberty to name." He slid a business card across the table. It contained only his name and a phone number. "What you're investigating is a matter of national security." Sarah studied his face, looking for signs of deception. "Are you here to threaten me? Tell me to back off?" A slight smile touched Daniel's lips. "On the contrary, I'm here because we need someone on the outside, someone with your skills and resources to help us understand the full scope of what's happening." "Why would I trust you?" Sarah challenged. "You shouldn't, not yet," Daniel replied frankly. "But consider this. If I wanted to shut down your investigation, there are more efficient ways than having this conversation." He nodded toward her laptop. "You've already identified a pattern. What you don't know yet is why it matters, and who's behind it." Sarah's journalistic instincts were at war with her caution. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A partnership of sorts. You continue your investigation. I provide guidance, context, and protection when necessary." Daniel leaned closer. "In return, you share what you find with me before you publish anything. And if I refuse, Daniel's expression turned serious. "Then you continue alone, and I wish you luck. But understand this, the people behind what happened on that flight have resources and influence that extend far beyond what you've imagined. The fact that they've managed to operate undetected for so long should tell you everything you need to know about their capabilities." Sarah considered his words carefully. Her entire career had been built on uncovering truths that others wanted hidden, but she'd never faced something of this magnitude before. "I need time to think," she finally said. Daniel stood adjusting his suit jacket. "Of course, but not too much time, Miss Taylor. Events are already in motion that neither of us can control." He placed another card on the table. "This is the name of a pilot who was recently reassigned after being involved in the incident. He might be worth talking to." Sarah looked down at the card. Written in neat block letters was a single name: Jack Thornton. As Daniel walked away, Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions: fear, excitement, determination. Whatever story she had stumbled upon, it was far bigger and more dangerous than she had initially thought. The question now was whether she had the courage to pursue it and who she could trust along the way. Back in Washington, D.C., Ryan Mitchell returned home to his apartment in Arlington, his mind racing with the information Harold Jenkins had shared. Maverick greeted him at the door, tail wagging, blissfully unaware of the growing web of intrigue that surrounded them. Ryan sat at his kitchen table and inserted the flash drive into his laptop. The files were encrypted, but a text document provided a simple password. As the documents opened before him, Ryan felt his heart sink. Harold hadn't exaggerated. There was indeed a pattern spanning months, possibly years. Whatever Maverick had discovered on flight AA-14337 was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. As he scrolled through the manifests and flight records, one name caught his attention, appearing with suspicious frequency across multiple flights: Thomas Wright, the impatient businessman from AA-137. Ryan pulled out his phone and hesitated before dialing Elizabeth Winters' number. Could he trust her with this information? Before he could decide, his phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. "Mitchell," he answered cautiously. "Officer Mitchell," came a woman's voice he didn't recognize. "My name is Sarah Taylor. I'm a journalist from Los Angeles, and I need to talk to you about what your dog found on flight AA-1437. Ryan's grip tightened on the phone. "How did you get this number?" "That's not important right now," Sarah replied. "What matters is that people are going to great lengths to bury this story, and we need to find out why. I think we can help each other." Ryan looked down at his laptop screen, at the pattern of flights and cargo manifests, at the name Thomas Wright highlighted in his search results. "I'm listening," he said finally. As night fell across the country, Jack Thornton packed his flight. Bagged for the unexpected Tokyo assignment, still troubled by the sudden change to his schedule. His phone rang, the airline calling, he assumed, with the details about tomorrow's flight. But it wasn't the airline. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, female, determined. "Captain Thornton, my name is Sarah Taylor. I'm investigating what really happened on flight AA-1437, and I think you're being deliberately reassigned to keep you away from the investigation. Please, before you leave for Tokyo, I need to talk to you." Jack stared out his bedroom window at the Los Angeles skyline, his world suddenly shifting beneath his feet. Whatever had been hidden on his plane that day, whatever Maverick, the German Shepherd, had discovered, it was now pulling together an unlikely group of people. A pilot, a K-9 officer, and a journalist, all seeking the same elusive truth. And, somewhere in the shadows, watching them all, were the architects of a scheme so sophisticated it had remained invisible until a dog's remarkable instincts had brought it to light. The Tokyo flight departed on schedule, but Jack Thornton wasn't on it. Instead, he sat in a quiet corner of a 24-hour diner near LAX, nursing a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Across from him, Sarah Taylor was reviewing her notes, occasionally glancing up to study the pilot's face. "You realize what you're doing, right?" Jack said finally, breaking the silence that had fallen between them. "Calling in sick, missing an international flight. This could end my career." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "And you did it anyway. Why?" Jack contemplated the question, searching for an answer that made sense even to himself. 25 years of flying, and I've never once felt like I was being used. That plane, those passengers, they were my responsibility. If something was happening under my nose, I need to know. Sarah nodded, understanding the weight of that responsibility. "According to my source, you're not the only one asking questions. A K-9 officer in D.C. named Ryan Mitchell has been digging too. He's the handler for the dog that detected the package. Have you spoken to him?" "Briefly, on the phone. He's cautious, but he agreed to share some information." Sarah pulled out her laptop. "He sent me this, flight manifests, cargo records, all showing a pattern going back at least 8 months. Jack leaned forward, his aviation experience allowing him to see connections that might elude others. "These are all cross-country flights, primarily East Coast to West Coast. Different airlines, different airports, but similar routes. And look at this." Sarah highlighted a section of the document. "Certain names appear repeatedly on these flights. One in particular, Thomas Wright, was on your flight." Jack frowned, trying to recall the passengers. There were over 200 people on that plane. "I wouldn't remember a specific name." "But you might remember him." Sarah pulled up a photograph on her laptop. "Business suit, early 50s, very impatient about the delay, according to witness accounts." Recognition flickered in Jack's eyes. "He came to the cockpit before takeoff asking about our flight path. Said he was concerned about turbulence because of a previous bad experience." Jack's frown deepened. It's not uncommon for anxious passengers to ask questions, but in hindsight, his interest in our exact route seems significant. Sarah was already typing notes. Mitchell found something else. The cargo manifests for these flights all list shipments from the same company, Pinnacle Electronics. Each shipment was bound for different destinations, different recipients, but they all originated from Pinnacle. "What does Pinnacle Electronics do?" Jack asked. "On paper, they manufacture specialized components for commercial and defense applications. Very legitimate, very respected." Sarah turned her laptop to show Jack the company's website. "Their CEO, Victor Langley, is a former Air Force intelligence officer with connections throughout the government and defense sectors." Jack studied the image of Victor Langley, a commanding presence with steel gray hair and the confident smile of a man accustomed to power. "You think he's involved in whatever was happening on these flights?" "I think it's worth finding out," Sarah replied. "And I think our best next step is to meet with Ryan Mitchell in person. He has access to information we don't, and he's already taking risks to get to the truth." Jack glanced at his watch, a habit formed over decades of adhering to strict flight schedules. "I've bought us some time with the sick leave, but it won't last long. How soon can Mitchell get to L.A.? "He can't," Sarah said, closing her laptop. "He's under too much scrutiny at the airport. If he suddenly takes leave and flies across the country, it would raise red flags. We need to go to him." Jack ran a hand through his hair, weighing the implications of what she was suggesting. "You realize what you're asking? If I go to D.C. while on sick leave, it would be obvious I lied about my condition." "I know," Sarah acknowledged, "and I wouldn't ask if I didn't believe this was important. People are going to extraordinary lengths to cover up whatever was on your plane. Don't you want to know why?" The question hung between them, a challenge and an invitation. After a long moment, Jack nodded. "Let me make some calls. I can't use my airline benefits to fly, but I have a friend who works for a different carrier. He might be able to help us get to D.C. discreetly." As they prepared to leave the diner, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. A quick scan of the nearly empty restaurant revealed nothing suspicious, yet the prickling sensation at the back of his neck persisted. "Something wrong?" Sarah asked, noticing his hesitation. "Just being cautious," Jack replied, though his unease remained as they stepped out into the cool Los Angeles night. In Washington, D.C., Ryan Mitchell was facing his own challenges. The flash drive from Harold Jenkins had provided valuable insights, but also placed him in an increasingly precarious position. After his conversation with Sarah Taylor, he'd begun cross-referencing the shipping manifests with Pinnacle Electronics' public records, looking for discrepancies that might explain what Maverick had detected. His search had led him to a dead end, or rather, too many ends to follow. Pinnacle's business operations were vast and complex, with subsidiaries and partners across multiple industries. On paper, everything appeared legitimate, but Ryan's instincts told him otherwise. "What are we missing, boy?" he asked Maverick, who lay at his feet as Ryan worked at his kitchen table. The German shepherd looked up at the sound of his name, his intelligent eyes seeming to understand the gravity of their situation. Ryan reached down to scratch behind Maverick's ears, drawing comfort from the solid presence of his partner. His cell phone rang. Elizabeth Winters calling. "Mitchell, where are you?" she asked without preamble. "At home." "Why?" "There's been a development. I need you to come in." Her voice was tight, controlled in a way that immediately put Ryan on alert. "It's my day off, Elizabeth. Can it wait until tomorrow?" "No, it can't. It's about Maverick." A pause. "There's been a request to reassign him to a different handler for an upcoming operation." Ryan's blood ran cold. "On whose authority?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out. The request came through official channels, but it bypassed normal procedures." Elizabeth's voice dropped lower. "Ryan, I think someone's trying to separate you two. You need to get ahead of this." "I'll be there in 30, Ryan said, already calculating his next moves. "And Elizabeth, thank you for the warning." "Always," she replied. After hanging up, Ryan looked down at Maverick. The thought of being separated from his partner was unthinkable, especially now. Whatever they had stumbled upon at the airport that day had set in motion a chain of events that was now threatening the very foundation of their partnership. Ryan quickly secured his laptop and the flash drive in a hidden compartment in his apartment, a habit left over from his military days. As he prepared to leave, his phone chimed with a text message from Sarah Taylor. "Arriving in D.C. tomorrow with Jack Thornton. Need to meet. Secure location." Ryan replied with a single address and a time, then pocketed his phone and whistled for Maverick to follow him to the car. Whatever was waiting for him at the airport, he would face it head on. But first, he needed to ensure that his partner remained by his side. Across town, in a luxury penthouse overlooking the Potomac, Victor Langley was reviewing the day's developments with his security chief, a former Special Forces operator named Marcus Reed. "The journalist has made contact with both the pilot and the K-9 officer," Marcus reported, his tone professional and detached. "They're converging on D.C. tomorrow." Victor nodded, seemingly unperturbed by the news. "And our contingency plan?" "In progress. The K-9 officer is being called in for a meeting about his dog's reassignment. The pilot's career is effectively over once the airline confirms he falsified a medical report. As for the journalist," Marcus paused, "she's more complicated. Her editor is already questioning her obsession with what he sees as a non-story. But she's determined." Victor moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing out at the city lights below. "Determination can be redirected, Marcus. Offer her an exclusive on Pinnacle's new defense contract. Give her access to our public projects, our charitable initiatives. Show her we have nothing to hide. And if that doesn't work?" Victor's reflection in the glass showed no emotion. "Then we discredit her. Every journalist has skeletons, stories they've embellished, sources they've protected inappropriately. Find her weaknesses." Marcus nodded, making notes on his tablet. "What about Professor Alan Fisher?" Marcus asked. He's been making inquiries with his contacts in the scientific community about advanced detection-evading materials. Victor turned from the window, his interest piqued. The professor from the flight? I thought he was just a random passenger. Apparently not. He's a chemical engineering expert specializing in composite materials. According to our sources, he's been reaching out to former colleagues at defense contractors, asking very specific questions about our patent applications. Nee. Victor poured himself a glass of scotch, considering this new information. Add him to the list. Monitor his communications, but don't intervene yet. He might lead us to others. As Marcus left to implement these directives, Victor returned to the window. Below, Washington, D.C. spread out before him, a city built on power, secrets, and influence, all elements he had mastered long ago. The unexpected detection of his specially designed package was a setback, certainly, but one he had contingency plans for. The real threat wasn't exposure of a single incident, but the potential unraveling of an operation years in the making. His phone buzzed with a secure message. Shipment rerouted, contingency alpha in effect. Victor smiled slightly. Even now, with the K-9 officer, the journalist, and the pilot converging, other packages were moving through other airports, bypassing security through different means. The game was far from over. At Reagan National Airport, Ryan Mitchell and Maverick arrived at the Security Administration offices, finding Elizabeth Winters waiting for them with a tense expression. "But Indies, they're in the conference room," she said quietly as they walked through the deserted corridor. "A Homeland Security, FBI, and someone from a department I don't recognize. They've been reviewing all the security footage from that day." Ryan Feltz. Maverick tensed beside him, the dog sensing his handler's unease. "What's their official reason for wanting to reassign Maverick?" "A specialized operation requiring his particular skills." Elizabeth's tone made it clear what she thought of that explanation. "I've delayed them by insisting on proper documentation and training transition protocols, but I can't stall much longer." They paused outside the conference room door. Through the glass panel, Ryan could see 3 men in suits reviewing documents spread across the table. "Ryan," Elizabeth said, her voice barely above a whisper, "whatever you and Maverick found, that day has powerful people concerned. Be careful what you say in there." Ryan nodded, squaring his shoulders. "Thanks for having my back." "Always," she replied, then pushed open the door. The men looked up as Ryan and Maverick entered, their expressions revealing nothing. The oldest of the three, a silver-haired man with penetrating blue eyes, stood to greet them. "Officer Mitchell, thank you for coming in on short notice. I'm Director Calloway from the Department of Homeland Security. These are Agents Foster and Brand," he gestured to his colleagues, who remained seated. "We've been reviewing the incident from last week, and we're impressed with your K-9 unit's performance." Ryan maintained a neutral expression. "Thank you. Sir, Maverick is an exceptional dog with outstanding training." "Yes, exceptional indeed," Calloway agreed, his gaze shifting to the German Shepherd. "Leo Absagt. So exceptional that we'd like to temporarily reassign him to a specialized task force focusing on similar threats at other major airports." "With all due respect, sir, Maverick works best with me. Our partnership is what makes him effective." Ryan rested his hand on the dog's head, a gesture both protective and possessive. Calloway smiled thinly. "We understand the bond between handler and dog, Officer Mitchell. However, national security sometimes requires personal sacrifices." The word sacrifice hung in the air, laden with unspoken meaning. Ryan met Calloway's gaze steadily. "May I ask what specific threat you're investigating that requires Maverick's skills?" A flicker of annoyance crossed Calloway's face. "That information is classified, Officer Mitchell. You don't have the clearance." "Then, with due respect, sir, I'll need a formal order, approved through the proper chain of command before I release my partner to another handler." Ryan's tone was respectful, but firm. K-9 units aren't equipment to be requisitioned. They are specialized teams built on trust and familiarity. The tension in the room was palpable. Maverick, sensing the atmosphere, pressed closer to Ryan's leg, his posture alert but calm. After a long moment, Calloway nodded curtly. "Very well. We'll have the formal paperwork drawn up by tomorrow morning. In the meantime, consider your unit on standby. No regular duties until further notice." Ryan recognized the tactic for what it was, a way to sideline him and Maverick while they prepared to separate them. "Understood, sir. Will that be all for now?" Calloway replied, his tone making it clear this was far from over. As Ryan and Maverick left the conference room with Elizabeth, he could feel the weight of their scrutiny on his back. Time was running out, and tomorrow would bring Sarah Taylor and Jack Thornton into this increasingly dangerous web. Whatever Maverick had detected on flight AA-1437, it was worth enough to make powerful people very nervous indeed. And as the night deepened over Washington, D.C., the threads of conspiracy continued to tighten around them all, drawing them inexorably toward a confrontation none of them might be prepared for. Dawn broke over Washington, D.C. with a pale, wintry light. Sarah Taylor and Jack Thornton, exhausted from their red-eye flight, sat in a secluded booth at a small cafe in Georgetown, far from the tourist areas and government buildings. They had arrived at Dulles International Airport just after a 5 a.m., taking separate routes through the terminal before meeting at the rental car counter. Every precaution seemed necessary now. "Are you sure this is the right place?" Jack asked, scanning the nearly empty cafe nervously. Sarah nodded, clutching her coffee cup for warmth. Mitchell chose it specifically. Minimal security cameras, multiple exits, and a sympathetic owner who doesn't ask questions. "Sounds like you journalists have your own secret networks," Jackie remarked with a tired smile. "Sometimes the best way to find the truth is to operate in the shadows," Sarah replied. She checked her watch again. "He should be here soon." As if on cue, the bell above the cafe door jingled, and Ryan Mitchell entered with Maverick at his side. The German Shepherd was not in his official K9 vest, but wore a simple civilian harness that made him look like any pet. Ryan spotted them, immediately nodding once before approaching their table. "Thank you for coming," Sarah said as Ryan slid into the booth, Maverick settling at his feet. "I don't have much time," Ryan replied, his voice low. "There's a meeting at 9 a.m. where they're planning to officially separate me from Maverick. I need to be back at the airport before then." Jack studied the K9 officer, the tense set of his shoulders, the alertness in his eyes. "You're taking a big risk meeting us like this." "We all are," Ryan acknowledged. "But after what happened yesterday, I know we're on to something bigger than any of us realized." He glanced down at Maverick, whose intelligent eyes seemed to understand the gravity of their situation. They want him because he can detect something their technology can't, something they're very desperate to keep hidden. Sarah leaned forward. "The package that Maverick found, do you know what was in it?" Ryan shook his head. "They classified that information immediately, but I have a theory." He pulled out his phone, navigating to a scientific article before sliding it across the table. "Professor Alan Fisher, who was on your flight, published this paper 3 years ago on composite materials designed to evade detection by standard security scanners." Sarah skimmed the abstract, her journalism background helping her translate the technical jargon. "He was developing materials for the military that could shield sensitive equipment during transport." "Exactly," Ryan confirmed. "But what if someone figured out how to use that technology for something else? Something they didn't want found, even by the most advanced airport scanning systems?" Jack frowned. But Maverick still detected it. Ryan reached down to stroke his partner's head. Dogs don't rely on technology. They can detect sense at parts per trillion, far beyond what any machine can do. Whatever coding or shielding they used, it might fool scanners, but not a dog's nose. That explains why they want to reassign Maverick, Sarah realized. He's a liability to their operation, Ryan nodded grimly. And they're not the only ones interested in him. Yesterday, I received a call from Victor Langley's office. Pinnacle Electronics wants to sponsor a K-9 training program at Reagan National, with Maverick as their poster dog. Sarah and Jack exchanged alarmed glances. "That's quite a coincidence," Jack remarked. "There are no coincidences here," Ryan replied. "Langley wants to keep tabs on Maverick, maybe study him to figure out how he detected their package." He leaned closer. "But here's what's really interesting. I did some digging into Professor Fisher. It turns out he was forced out of his research position after refusing to sign off on a classified application of his technology. 3 months later, Pinnacle Electronics filed a similar patent. Sarah's reporter instincts were firing on all cylinders now. So Fisher developed the technology, refused to let it be used for something he didn't approve of, and then Pinnacle basically took his research anyway, and now Fisher just happened to be on the exact flight where Maverick discovered a package using what might be his own technology," Jack added, the pieces falling into place. Ryan checked his watch anxiously. "I need to get back soon, but there's one more thing you should know. I've been monitoring the security alerts at other major airports. In the past week, since our incident, there have been an unusual number of false alarms and security drills, particularly around cargo areas. They're testing for vulnerabilities," Jack surmised, his years in aviation giving him insight into the patterns, checking which airports might have dogs like Maverick, or they're clearing the way for more shipments. "Creating cry-wolf situations so that real alerts are taken less seriously," Sarah suggested. Ryan nodded. "Either way, something big is happening, and it's happening soon." He placed a small USB drive on the table. "This contains everything I found. Flight patterns, cargo manifests, Pinnacle's connections. I've encrypted it, but the password is Maverick's training identification number." He looked directly at Sarah. "If something happens to me, make sure this information gets to the right people." The gravity of his words settled over the table. This was no longer just an investigation. It was becoming dangerous in ways none of them had anticipated. "What's your plan now?" Jack asked. "I'm going to stall the reassignment as long as possible," Ryan replied. "Elizabeth Winters is helping me navigate the bureaucracy, demanding proper documentation and transition protocols. It might buy us a few days." Sarah tapped her fingers thoughtfully on the table. "We need to talk to Professor Fisher. If anyone knows what was in that package and why it matters, it's him." "He's been avoiding my calls," Ryan admitted, "but he might respond to you, Captain Thornton, since you were responsible for the flight." Jack nodded. "I'll try to reach out. Where is he now?" "Teaching at Georgetown University," Ryan replied. "He has a lecture this afternoon on advanced material science." As they finalized their plans, Ryan's phone buzzed with an incoming message. His expression darkened as he read it. "What is it?" Sarah asked. "Elizabeth," he said tersely, "the meeting's been moved up. They're expecting me at the airport in 30 minutes. He stood quickly, Maverick instantly alert at his side. "I have to go. Be careful who you trust. This goes higher than we thought." After Ryan left, Sarah and Jack sat in silence for a moment, processing everything they'd learned. "Do you think he's right?" Jack finally asked. "About how high this goes?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "In my experience, when powerful people go to these lengths to hide something, it's because the stakes are enormous. Whatever Pinnacle is shipping, whatever Maverick discovered, it's just the tip of the iceberg." Jack looked out the window, watching as Ryan and Maverick disappeared around a corner. "Then we'd better find Professor Fisher before they do." Meanwhile, at Pinnacle Electronics headquarters in Crystal City, Virginia, Victor Langley was receiving an update on the morning's developments. His office occupied the entire top floor of the sleek glass and steel building, offering panoramic views of the Pentagon across the Potomac River, a visual reminder of Pinnacle's close ties to defense and intelligence communities. "Mitchell met with the journalist and the pilot this morning," Marcus Reed reported, placing a folder on Langley's desk. "Our surveillance team tracked them to a cafe in Georgetown." Victor leafed through the surveillance photos with mild interest. And the dog? Still with Mitchell, but not for long. The reassignment meeting has been expedited. Good. Victor closed the folder. What about Professor Fisher? Scheduled to give a lecture at Georgetown University at 2 p.m. We have a team in place to approach him afterward with your offer. Victor nodded approvingly. Make sure he understands the benefits of cooperation. His research is brilliant, but his ethical concerns have become inconvenient. Marcus hesitated before continuing. There's one more thing, sir. We've detected unusual activity on our secure servers. Someone's been accessing shipping records, personnel files, trying to establish connection patterns. Victor's expression hardened. Source? We're working on tracing it, but whoever it is knows how to cover their tracks. They're good. Victor turned to the window, his reflection impassive. Increase security on all upcoming shipments. Move to Protocol Echo for the next week. And, Marcus, he paused, have our people at the FAA accelerate the certification process for our new scanning technology. Sir, the testing phase isn't complete. I'm aware, Victor interrupted smoothly, but recent events have created a perfect justification for emergency deployment. The detection of an unspecified threat at Reagan National provides us with exactly the scenario we need to fast-track approval. Understanding dawned on Marcus's face. You're using the incident with the dog to push through your own technology. Victor smiled thinly. Sometimes, Marcus, apparent setbacks create their own opportunities. By this time next month, our scanning systems will be in airports across the country, approved under emergency protocols that bypass normal testing requirements. And those systems won't detect our special shipments, Marcus concluded. Precisely. Victor returned to his desk. Now I have a conference call with our friends at Homeland Security in 15 minutes. Make sure our demonstration for this afternoon is flawless. Director Calloway is bringing several key decision makers. As Marcus left, Victor's phone buzzed with a secure message. The content brought a rare, genuine smile to his face. Everything was proceeding according to plan, despite the unexpected complication caused by one perceptive German Shepherd. By the time Mitchell, Taylor, and Thornton figured out what was really happening, it would be too late to stop it. At Georgetown University, Professor Alan Fisher was preparing for his afternoon lecture, spreading his notes across the podium in the empty auditorium. At 58, he carried himself with the slightly distracted air of a lifelong academic, his wire-rimmed glasses perpetually sliding down his nose, his tweed jacket worn at the elbows from years of leaning on laboratory tables. But beneath that stereotypical professor exterior was a brilliant mind and a troubled conscience. Since the incident on Flight AA-1337, he had barely slept, torn between fear and an overwhelming sense of responsibility. When he had boarded that flight, he had no idea that his past research would quite literally intersect with his present journey. The sound of the auditorium door opening broke his concentration. Looking up, he expected to see an early student, but instead found himself facing Jack Thornton and Sarah Taylor. Professor Fisher, Jack said, approaching the podium, my name is Jack Thornton. I was the captain of Flight AA-1437 last week. Fisher removed his glasses, his expression weary. How did you find me? That doesn't matter, Sarah interjected, joining them at the podium. What matters is that we know about your research on detection-evading materials, and we know that Pinnacle Electronics has been using a version of your technology to ship undetectable packages on commercial flights. Fisher glanced nervously around the empty auditorium. You shouldn't be here. It's not safe. For whom? Jack asked pointedly. The passengers on my plane, the public? Fisher's shoulders slumped. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Then help us. Understand? Sarah urged. Whatever was on that flight was important enough for you to be following it, important enough for Pinnacle to go to extraordinary lengths to cover it up. Fisher hesitated, years of professional caution warring with his conscience. Finally, he gestured for them to follow him to a small office adjacent to the auditorium. Once inside, with the door locked, Fisher pulled a laptop from his bag. 3 years ago, I developed a composite material that could shield sensitive equipment from detection by standard scanning technology. The intention was to protect military communications equipment during transport through hostile territories. He typed a password, bringing up technical diagrams that meant little to Sarah and Jack. But then I discovered that certain parties wanted to use my research for something else entirely, not just to shield communications equipment, but to create completely undetectable compartments that could bypass any security system in the world. Pinnacle Electronics, Sarah said. Fisher nodded grimly. Victor Langley saw the potential immediately, not just for military applications, but for commercial ones too. Imagine being able to ship anything, anywhere, completely undetected by conventional security measures. That's why you left your research position, Jack realized. I was forced out, Fisher corrected. When I refused to sign off on those applications, suddenly there were questions about my methodology, concerns about my results, allegations of procedural violations. Within months, I was gone, and Pinnacle had essentially taken over my research. Sarah leaned forward. But what are they shipping, Professor? What was on that plane that a dog could smell but scanners couldn't detect? Fisher's gaze dropped to his hands. I don't know exactly, but based on the patterns I've been tracking and the security protocols surrounding these shipments, it's something that multiple governments and private entities are willing to pay an extraordinary premium to transport undetected. Could it be weapons, Jack asked, thinking of his passengers, of the risk they had unknowingly faced. Not conventional ones, Fisher replied. Those would still trigger certain sensors. No, this is something else. Something that requires absolute secrecy, not just in transport, but in existence. Sarah's mind was racing through possibilities. Experimental technology, biological materials, classified research. Any or all of those, Fisher acknowledged. But what matters isn't what's in each individual package. It's the system Pinnacle has created. They've established a virtually untraceable transport network that operates within legitimate commercial aviation. Think about what that's worth to certain clients. Jack's expression darkened as the implication sank in. And now they're trying to reassign the dog that exposed their operation. Not just that, Fisher said, turning his laptop to show them a press release. Pinnacle has just announced an emergency deployment of their new aviation security scanning technology, supposedly in response to the security incident at Reagan National. They're pushing it through the FAA certification process using emergency protocols. Sarah quickly scanned the document. But why would they want to introduce new scanning technology if they already have a way to bypass existing systems? Fisher's smile was grim. Because they control the new technology, it's designed to specifically ignore their special containers while detecting everything else. It's brilliant, really. They're using the incident with the dog to introduce their own security systems, which will make their shipments even more secure. Then we need to expose this, Sarah declared, her journalistic determination flaring, before their technology gets deployed, before they can reassign Maverick. It won't be that simple, Fisher warned. Langley has connections throughout. The government, defense contractors, intelligence agencies. Challenging Pinnacle means challenging a deeply entrenched network of powerful interests. Jack stood up, his decision made. I didn't become a pilot to unknowingly transport dangerous materials on my plane. Whatever the risk, we need to stop this. He looked at Fisher intently. Will you help us, Professor? Fisher hesitated, the weight of years of silence and fear evident in his expression. Then, with a resigned nod, he closed his laptop. My lecture starts in 20 minutes. After that, we'll go to my lab. There's something there you need to see, something that might help us prove what Pinnacle is really doing. As they left the office, none of them noticed the maintenance worker in the hallway, nor the small listening device that had captured every word of their conversation. Within minutes, Victor Langley would know exactly what they were planning and take steps to ensure they never reached Fisher's lab. The game of cat and mouse was accelerating, with Maverick, the German Shepherd, unwittingly at its center, the one detector that could not be fooled, the one threat to an operation years in the making. And as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across Washington, D.C., the stage was being set for a confrontation that would either expose the truth or bury it forever, along with those who sought to reveal it. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows of Professor Fisher's laboratory at Georgetown University, casting long shadows across the pristine workbenches and sophisticated equipment. Sarah Taylor and Jack Thornton followed the professor through the security doors, watching as he meticulously entered his access code and submitted to a biometric scan. The university upgraded security after what happened with my research, Fisher explained, leading them into the main lab space. Ironic, considering what we're investigating. The laboratory was surprisingly compact but filled with cutting-edge equipment. Specialized microscopes, material testing devices, and computer modeling stations lined the walls. At the center stood a large workbench covered with samples of different materials, each labeled with precise notations. "Here's where I've been conducting my own investigation," Fisher said, approaching a locked cabinet. At the far end of the lab, he entered another code, and the cabinet slid open to reveal dozens of small material samples arranged in a precise grid. After I was forced out of my previous position, I continued my research privately, trying to understand how Pinnacle had modified my original design. He selected a small, metallic-looking square about 2 inches across. "This is a sample of my original composite material designed to shield sensitive communications equipment from detection." He placed it under a specialized scanner, and the attached monitor displayed its molecular structure. Notice the density pattern, the way it absorbs and deflects different wavelengths. Sarah and Jack leaned closer, though the technical details meant little to them. "Now look at this," Fisher continued, placing a second sample under the scanner. "This is a piece I managed to obtain from a Pinnacle prototype. Similar base composition, but with subtle modifications to the molecular structure." Jack studied the two images side by side. "They look almost identical to me." "That's intentional," Fisher explained. "On a superficial scan, they appear the same, but the Pinnacle version has additional properties. It doesn't just shield from detection, it actively mimics the scanning signature of whatever ordinary material it's supposed to resemble." Sarah's eyes widened with understanding. "So it doesn't just hide what's inside, it pretends to be something else entirely." "Exactly," Fisher confirmed. "A container lined with this material could contain almost anything, but when scanned, it would appear to hold ordinary electronics or clothing or whatever benign cargo the shipper claims." "And that's what was on my plane," Jack said, the realization hitting him anew. "A container that looked ordinary to scanners, but contained something else entirely." "Something that only Maverick could detect," Sarah added, thinking of the German Shepherd's alert behavior on the tarmac. Fisher nodded gravely. "Dogs detect things differently than our technology does. They rely on scent molecules, not X-rays or radiation. Whatever coding Pinnacle developed, it didn't account for a highly trained K9 nose." "But what was inside?" Jack pressed. "What are they shipping that requires this level of secrecy?" Fisher moved to his computer, typing rapidly to bring up a series of files. "Based on the shipping patterns and the extreme security measures, I believe they're transporting components for a next-generation surveillance system, one that violates numerous international agreements and privacy laws." He brought up schematics for what looked like ordinary computer chips. "These aren't just regular microprocessors. They're neural interface components designed to monitor and potentially influence human brain activity from a distance. Individually, each component seems innocuous, which is why they're shipped separately. But together, they form a system capable of unprecedented surveillance." Sarah stared at the screen in disbelief. That's straight out of science fiction. 10 years ago, perhaps, Fisher corrected. But the technology has advanced rapidly, often in classified programs. What makes this particular system so dangerous is its undetectable nature. It could be embedded in everyday objects, phones, computers, even household appliances, without anyone knowing. Jack's expression hardened. And the government is involved in this? Some elements within certain agencies, yes, Fisher confirmed, but I don't believe it's officially sanctioned. More likely, Langley is selling to the highest bidders, foreign governments, private security firms, anyone willing to pay for unparalleled surveillance capabilities. Sarah was already taking notes, her journalistic instincts on fire. We need evidence, concrete, irrefutable proof that links Pinnacle to these shipments and explains what they're really transporting. Fisher gestured to the material samples. These are a start, but not enough for real proof. We'd need access to Pinnacle's secure shipping records, client lists, and technical specifications, which we'll never get. Jack said glumly. Sarah wasn't so easily deterred. Maybe we don't need to get them ourselves. Maybe we just need to point someone in the right direction, someone with the authority to demand those records. Like who? Jack asked. From what? We've heard Langley has connections throughout the government. But not everywhere, Sarah countered. Ryan mentioned that Elizabeth Winters was helping him fight the reassignment. She seems to be one of the few people at the airport willing to question what's happening. And she has the authority to review all cargo security protocols, Jack added, catching Sarah's train of thought. Exactly, Sarah nodded excitedly. If we can provide her with enough evidence to justify a formal investigation into Pinnacle's shipments, she could demand the records we need. Fisher looked skeptical. Langley will fight any investigation with every resource at his disposal. Not if there's public pressure, Sarah argued. My editor may think this is a non-story now, but with what we've learned today, that would change instantly. A major corporation potentially smuggling prohibited technology using commercial flights? That's front-page news. Jack checked his watch anxiously. We should contact Mitchell. He needs to know what we've discovered, especially with the reassignment. Meeting happening today. Sarah was already dialing, but after several rings, the call went to voicemail. He's not answering. That's not a good sign. Try Elizabeth Winters, Jack suggested. Sarah scrolled through her contacts for the number Ryan had given her for emergencies. After 2 rings, a terse voice answered, "This is Winters." "Ms. Winters, my name is Sarah Taylor. I'm a journalist working with Ryan Mitchell. We need to speak urgently about Pinnacle Electronics and their shipping practices." There was a pause before Elizabeth responded, her voice noticeably lower. "Miss Taylor, I'm currently in a meeting regarding Officer Mitchell and his K-9 unit. I can't speak freely." Sarah's heart sank. "Are they proceeding with the reassignment?" "Yes," Elizabeth replied carefully, "despite my objections. The paperwork has been approved. The transfer is scheduled for tomorrow morning." Jack, who could hear the conversation, leaned closer to the phone. "This is Captain Jack Thornton from Flight AA-1437. We have information about what Pinnacle is really shipping and why they want Maverick reassigned. It's critical that he stays with Officer Mitchell." Another pause, then Elizabeth spoke quickly and quietly. "Meet me at the K-9 training facility behind Terminal C in 2 hours. Come through the service entrance. I'll leave instructions with security. And Miss Taylor, Captain Thornton, be careful. There are eyes everywhere." The call ended, leaving Sarah and Jack exchanging concerned glances. "We need to move fast," Sarah said, turning to Fisher. "Can you bring any evidence that might convince her to launch an investigation?" Fisher nodded, already gathering samples and loading files onto a secure drive. "I can show her the material composition, the shipping patterns, everything I've compiled. It might not be enough for a conviction, but it should justify a deeper investigation." "Good," Sarah said, gathering her notes. "Let's—" The sudden blare of the laboratory's security alarm cut her off mid-sentence. Red warning lights flashed along the ceiling as an automated voice announced, "Security breach detected. All personnel, please evacuate immediately." Fisher's face paled. "That's not a drill. Someone's trying to override the lab's security systems." "Langley," Jack surmised grimly. "Someone must have tipped him off that we're here." Fisher moved quickly to a secondary control panel, typing a series of commands. "I'm initiating emergency protocols to protect the research data, but we need to leave now. There's a service exit through the back of the lab." As they hurried toward the exit, the main laboratory door slid open. Two men in maintenance uniforms entered, their postures immediately revealing them as anything but maintenance workers. "Professor Fisher," one called out, his hand slipping inside his jacket. "Security reported a breach. We're here to escort you to safety." "I don't recognize you," Fisher replied cautiously, subtly positioning himself between the men and Sarah and Jack. "And I know all the university security personnel." The men exchanged glances, abandoning the pretense. "Mr. Langley would like to speak with you about your ongoing research. You and your friends are to come with us." Jack stepped forward, his years of military service before becoming a pilot evident in his stance. "I'm afraid we have a prior engagement." The standoff was interrupted by a new sound, the distinctive bark of a German shepherd, followed by a familiar voice shouting, "Security, stay where you are!" Ryan Mitchell appeared at the lab's side entrance, Maverick at his side. The dog's posture was alert, focused intently on the two fake maintenance workers. The momentary distraction was all they needed. Fisher quickly activated an emergency fire suppression system, filling the lab with a dense, harmless fog designed to protect sensitive equipment. In the confusion, Ryan guided them through the side exit and into a service corridor. "How did you find us?" Sarah asked, as they hurried toward a waiting vehicle. "Elizabeth tracked your phone when you called," Ryan explained, opening the SUV's doors. "She suspected Langley would make a move once he realized what you were doing. Get in, we don't have much time." As they sped away from the university, Ryan filled them in on his situation. They finalized the reassignment. Tomorrow morning, Maverick is supposed to be transferred to a special task force led by Director Calloway. "Calloway works with Langley," Fisher said. "He's been involved in several classified Pinnacle projects." Ryan nodded grimly. "I suspected as much. That's why Elizabeth and I decided to go off-grid. She's risking her career by helping us, but she's seen enough to know something's seriously wrong." Sarah quickly brought Ryan up to speed on what they had learned in Fisher's lab. Fisher believes Pinnacle is shipping components for an advanced surveillance system, one that could potentially monitor and influence people without their knowledge. Ryan glanced at Maverick in the rearview mirror. "And somehow he can detect it when our technology can't. It's the organic compounds in the neural interfaces," Fisher explained. "They have a distinct molecular signature that would be undetectable to standard scanners, but would have a scent profile that a dog could potentially identify, especially one with Maverick's specialized training." "So what's our plan?" Jack asked, watching nervously for any signs of pursuit. "Elizabeth has arranged a secure meeting with several trusted officials," Ryan replied. "People outside Langley's influence, an FBI special investigator, a representative from the Congressional Oversight Committee, and a senior TSA official with direct access to the FAA commissioner." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "She's not wasting any time." "There isn't any to waste," Ryan said seriously. "Pinnacle's new scanning technology is set for emergency deployment within 72 hours. Once it's installed, their shipping network will be virtually untouchable." As they drove toward Reagan National Airport, the gravity of the situation weighed heavily on them all. They were challenging a powerful, well-connected corporation with tentacles reaching into the highest levels of government and security agencies. The odds were stacked against them, but they had something Langley hadn't counted: honor the unshakable. Bond between a K-9 officer and his dog, the determination of a pilot who refused to see his aircraft used for nefarious purposes, the persistence of a journalist committed to uncovering the truth, and the expertise of a scientist with the courage to speak out. And of course, they had Maverick, the extraordinary dog whose acute senses had detected what billions of dollars of technology could not. 2 hours later, they sat in the secure conference room of the K9 training facility, presenting their evidence to Elizabeth Winters and her carefully selected group of officials. Fisher explained the technology, displaying the material samples and technical specifications. Sarah outlined the shipping patterns and the suspicious reassignment attempts. Jack described the unusual security response to the incident on his flight, and Ryan demonstrated Maverick's unique detection abilities using a small sample of the composite material Fisher had provided. "Let me be clear," the FBI special investigator said after they had finished. "You're alleging that Pinnacle Electronics has been using commercial flights to transport components for an illegal surveillance system using technology specifically designed to evade standard security protocols." "Yes," Sarah confirmed. "And now they're pushing through their own scanning technology that would make these shipments even harder to detect." "These are serious accusations against a major defense contractor," the congressional representative noted. "We would need substantial evidence to proceed with a formal investigation." Elizabeth Winters leaned forward. "Which is exactly why we need to act now, before Maverick is reassigned and before Pinnacle's new scanning technology is deployed. We need to seize their shipping records, client lists, and technical specifications before they can be altered or destroyed." The TSA official looked thoughtful. "I could temporarily halt the certification process for their new scanning technology, citing additional testing requirements. That would give us some time. And I can request a formal review of all cargo procedures involving Pinnacle shipments," Elizabeth added. "That would give us legal access to their manifests and security protocols." The FBI investigator nodded slowly. "I'll need to consult with my superiors, but based on what you've presented, I believe we have grounds for a preliminary investigation." As the officials conferred among themselves, Sarah moved closer to Ryan, who was kneeling beside Maverick. "You two are quite the team," she said softly. "He really is exceptional." Ryan smiled, rubbing the German Shepherd's ears affectionately. "He just does what he's trained to do, detects what others miss, stays focused no matter what." He looked up at Sarah. "That's all any of us can do, right? Use our specific talents to protect what matters." Jack joined them, watching as the officials continued their discussion. "Do you think it will be enough to stop Langley, to expose what Pinnacle is doing?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "But we've started something that can't be easily stopped. Once the right people start asking the right questions, the truth has a way of emerging." Fisher approached, his expression cautiously optimistic. "They're going to proceed with the investigation. The FBI will secure Pinnacle's shipping records, and the congressional representative is placing a hold on their new scanning technology pending a full review." "And Maverick?" Ryan asked anxiously. Elizabeth Winters joined them, a satisfied smile on her face. "The reassignment has been officially canceled. In fact, the K9 unit is being expanded with a special focus on detecting new composite materials. Congratulations, Officer Mitchell. You've just been promoted to head trainer." Relief washed over Ryan's face as he wrapped an arm around Maverick. "Hear that, boy? We're staying together." The dog seemed to understand, pressing closer to his handler with obvious contentment. As the meeting concluded and they prepared to leave, Sarah pulled out her recorder. "So once the investigation is formalized, would any of you be willing to go on record about what happened?" Jack chuckled. "Always the journalist," Sarah shrugged unapologetically. "This is a story that needs to be told, not just about Pinnacle's illegal activities, but about how one remarkable dog detected what billions of dollars of technology couldn't, and potentially saved countless people from having their privacy violated in ways they couldn't imagine." Elizabeth considered the request thoughtfully. "Once the investigation is secure, yes, the public deserves to know both about the threat and about the extraordinary canine that uncovered it." Ryan nodded his agreement. "Maverick's just doing his job, but if his story helps people understand the value of these amazing animals and the work they do, then I'm all for it." In the days that followed, events moved with surprising speed. The FBI investigation uncovered extensive evidence of Pinnacle's covert shipping network, leading to the company's suspension from all government contracts pending a full review. Victor Langley and several top executives were placed on administrative leave as investigators combed through years of records and technical specifications. The aviation security community was rocked by revelations about the flaws in standard scanning technology and the sophisticated methods used to circumvent it. A comprehensive review of security protocols was initiated across all major airports, with K-9 units suddenly receiving unprecedented recognition and resources. For Sarah Taylor, the story became the defining moment of her career. A front-page expose that was picked up by media outlets across the country. Her detailed reporting on the intersection of technology, security, and corporate power earned her a prestigious journalism award and established her as one of the nation's leading investigative reporters. Jack Thornton returned to flying with a renewed appreciation for the complex security systems that protected his aircraft and passengers. His willingness to risk his career to uncover the truth earned him the respect of his peers and a special commendation from the Pilots Association for extraordinary commitment to passenger safety. Professor Alan Fisher found vindication as his research was recognized for its importance and his ethical concerns were finally taken seriously. He was offered a position heading a new research initiative focused on developing more effective and transparent security technologies, with strict ethical oversight built into every phase of development. And for Ryan Mitchell and Maverick, life returned to a new normal. The daily patrols of Reagan National continued, but with enhanced recognition of the critical role they played. The bond between handler and dog, already unbreakable, had been strengthened further by their shared ordeal and triumph. 6 months after the incident, on a perfect spring day, a special ceremony was held at Reagan National Airport to honor Maverick and the K-9 unit. As Ryan watched his partner receive a custom-made medal for exceptional service, he reflected on how one dog's remarkable instincts had unraveled a conspiracy that technology could not detect. Beside him stood Sarah, Jack, and Professor Fisher, unlikely allies brought together by extraordinary circumstances, now united by friendship and shared purpose. After the ceremony, as they walked together along the perimeter of the tarmac, Sarah voiced what they were all thinking. It's amazing, isn't it? With all our technology, all our sophisticated systems and advanced algorithms, it still came down to a dog's nose and instincts to uncover the truth. Ryan smiled, watching Maverick trot ahead of them, ever vigilant, ever alert. Sometimes the simplest solutions are still the best, and sometimes the most extraordinary heroes have 4 legs and a wagging tail. Jack laughed, the sound carrying across the tarmac where planes were taking off and landing, now with an additional layer of security, thanks to their efforts. I'll drink to that. As the sun began to set over Washington, D.C., casting a golden glow across the airport, they walked together toward the future they had helped secure, one where truth had been unleashed, justice served, and an extraordinary canine hero had shown that sometimes the greatest technology of all is the bond between a loyal dog and the humans who trust in his remarkable abilities. Maverick, Ryan said, "My Nardert. Connor's extraordinary, and at my love heart."